Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Journey into Nyx. We are in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Zach Hill, and we are ready for feature match area coverage down in round number 2. We've got Ivan Floch versus Jon Finkel. They are eagerly awaiting to play some magic here in the second round. Zach, we're in limited, full block Theros block limited here. That means that we've introduced the Journey into Nyx pack as the pack one, pick one. We saw some pretty interesting drafts before. Take a look at Jon Finkel, Hall of Famer. Johnny Magic, he's one of the best ever, if not the best. Playing against Ivan Floch, he comes from Slovak Republic, and another great player, really an up-and-comer in relation to John, but he's actually an established vet in relation to most Magic players.
As being compared, what your experience level is relative to John is sort of an unfair comparison, I think.
Agree. All right, so we're underway here. Ivan leads off with a Forest and a Plains for Jon Finkel. No turn one plays for either player. Not terribly uncommon to see that happen in Limited, though there are quite a few playable one-drops floating around this format. Deepwater Hypnotist is going to kick things off for Ivan, and is there a 2-drop on double Plains in the future here for Jon Finkel? There is. It is an Akroan Skyguard. He passes the turn back to Ivan. And, things are starting to develop here. This is a pretty standard progression. Floch is going to offer the trade for the, you got to say, much better Akroan Skyguard, and Jon Finkel declines.
Yeah, and that's actually a really awkward scenario for John there because, I mean, Skyguard just so much better than Hypnotist. But once Hypnotist gets in, that makes it a lot more likely that it's going to keep connecting. Mm-hmm. You know, the -3/-0 ability basically takes a blocker out of the equation entirely, and that matters a lot when you have 5 points worth of power on the ground.
All right, Harvest Guard or Alceids is going to hit the battlefield for Jon Finkel. It's going to target the Akroan Skyguard, which unfortunately does not trigger Heroic. It's got to be a spell cast from your hand, and that's going to let Ivan attack with both of his creatures here. Unfortunately for Jon Finkel, the Deepwater Hypnotist has made his Harvest Guard Alceids -3/-0 until end of turn, so it's going to block still, but it's not actually going to kill anything. And a nice little curve here for Floch. He now adds a Ferris Band Tromper to his battlefield, and things are really getting moving here for Floch. Now back on Jon Finkel's side, another Plains. Is he mono-white? What's going on here?
It looks like he's not mono-white. We don't have the hand viewer up yet, but we see Satyr, Grove Dancer, Time to Feed, Mischief, and Mayhem all in Finkel's hand right now, but he still has Hold at Bay, as well as another Harvest Guard Alcid. So plenty of threats to play on Finkel's side, but that is a really powerful Hypnotist into 3/2 into 3/3 Fury's Band Tromper hand for Floch. And we see Whitewater Naiads capping off that mana curve. I mean, really one of the best possible draws for Floch this game.
Man, the old 2, 3, 4, 5, that is pretty rough to beat. Now, does he have an extra land here that he can play as well to play the Whitewater Naiads?
It looks like what we're seeing is Forest, Satyr, Wayfinder, Naiads, and Archetype Imagination at 6. I mean, if he gets another land, just 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a lot of unblockability, and just representing a lot of damage any way you look at it.
All right, everybody's going to hit the red zone. One of the Harvest Guard Alceids, the middle one there, has -3/-0, so it's going to be an 0/3 blocker. The other one,
fantastic,
a 2/1. Excuse me, a 2/3 blocker, and Ivan is going to give his Deepwater Hypnotist unblockability until end of turn and attack with everybody.
And that's, you may be wondering, okay, why is he giving the 2/1 unblockability instead of the 3/2? But allowing him to keep connecting with that Hypnotist means that Floch basically gets to just shut out a blocker every single turn for the rest of the game, determining that that's definitely worth the one fewer damage that he's going to be able to deal this turn.
Also, it lets him get in with that creature, where he wouldn't have been able to attack with it at all otherwise, because there was an active 2/3 that was sitting there.
Exactly. The 3/2 can trade with the 2/3. The 2/1 would just be attacking into it, accomplishing nothing otherwise.
Just getting munched. So pass the turn back to Jon Finkel, who now does find a Forest. So both of these players, of course, sitting at 1-0 in their draft pod. They have won their first match, and they find themselves in the second match here. And man, Ivan Floch with this savage curve out here, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if he's going to draw a land next turn, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is incredibly difficult to beat in limited. But we're going to see if Jon Finkel can find his way out of it. If anybody can, it's him.
Well, and I will say Jon's hand time to feed, allowing him to gain a little bit of life. Hold at bay, preventing 7 entire damage. That can neutralize almost an entire attack from Floch. And with Mischief and Mayhem in Finkel's hand, he will be able to end the game in just an attack or two if he's able to stabilize and make sure he doesn't die on the counterattack. So Finkel, having hit that forest, now has a lot of options. He's got to figure out how he can grow his Skyguard. He's got to figure out how he can stabilize and not die. He's got to figure out how to maximize his combat tricks. So even though he only has 5 mana and 2 creatures on the battlefield, just a lot of options for Jon right now.
All right, let's see what he's going to start off with here. Looks like a Satyr Grove Dancer. And he's going to put a +1/+1 counter on his flyer. Now, that's not a heroic trigger either. That's just a counter that the Grove Dancer gets to put somewhere. And Jon's not going to attack at all. He's just going to pass a turn back. There is an Inspired trigger on the Ferris Band Tromper there. And is there a land here for Floch?
And
he's deciding what he wants to shrink. So I think we're still in his upkeep here. We've got 2 Inspired triggers. The first one already resolved. That's on the Tromper. It got a counter. And now he's trying to decide what to shrink down. It is a land. He finds an island off the top. Now, this time, though, he does have some considerations as Jon Finkel has 3 mana. And even though he finally found his green mana source on his big 5 mana found my green, he just played a 2-drop. You know, so that's a little bit questionable there for Floch's side. He could be thinking about cards like maybe a Ray of Dissolution to knock the archetype out of the sky. But he's going for it. Land, Archetype of Imagination. His creatures get flying. Interestingly, it's also going to knock that Akroan Skyguard to the ground.
Yeah, and this is just one of the I mean, I have watched a lot of limited games of Magic. Floch's curve in this game is one of the best I have ever seen. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not just casting permanents, but able to neutralize blockers with the Deepwater Hypnotist triggers and the Whitewater Naiads. I mean, Floch has had exactly what he needs. Finkel was setting up a Hold at Bay on the Skyguard, hopefully able to knock some of those creatures out of the way. But, I mean, that archetype is just spelling game over for Jon right now.
Remember, the archetype is also an enchantment, so it's going to get a trigger off the Whitewater Naiads as well. Hold at Bay is the card that is played here. And it was for, let's see, it was for 10, so Jon's only going to take 3 here. So Jon's got Forest, Mischief and Mayhem, Time to Feed in his hand.
And time to feed, the kind of thing that you want. I mean, you're going to be able to eat that archetype, gain some life if you need to, but you know, not, I think, able to keep any of your creatures around. Yeah, I mean, you've got a 2/3, a 1/1, and a 2/2 that can grow into a 3/3. You can neutralize Hypnotist, which will gain you some life, but I mean, that's going to be a big crackback from Floch's side. And Mischief and Mayhem, good Magic card, capable of ending games, but 18 is a lot of
also,
damage.
I mean, he can't even eat something with his Time to Feed, right?
I think he's able to kill
he can
the 2/1.
trade.
Yeah, right. His own creature's going to die.
He can kill the Deepwater Hypnotist, but he doesn't even get to just remove something with it.
Right.
So this is just a really tough spot. He has to kill that Archetype of Imagination at some point. All right, he's going to attack for starters here.
No blocks. Sure, take.
And there's no blocks. That's going to drop Ivan Floch down to 14. And Time to Feed is just going to have to 2-for-1 Jon Finkel here. He is going to gain the 3 life, but he gets Archetype of Imagination off the battlefield, leaving him with just a 1/1, Mischief and Mayhem in hand, and he's facing down a 4/4, a 5/5, and a 2/2. And in fact, his 1/1 is now an 0/1. So things could not be worse here for Jon Finkel. He is at 10 life, so he doesn't have to die this turn, thanks to the chump block on the Tromper. But he's still just taking 6, and he's way, 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 way behind here.
I will say that if that attack wasn't lethal and he didn't have to block, Mischief of Mayhem is almost close enough to end the game, but not with Snake of the Golden Grove coming over the top right now. I mean, Floch just permanent after permanent after permanent.
Yeah, a truly savage draw here for Ivan.
Yeah, I dropped the card down there. I don't know if it's in my library or if it was...
These was from the graveyard.
My graveyard. I don't...
It was 1/1 guy.
Yeah.
All right. Card fell on the ground. They're just making sure if it was from his yard or from his library. It was from his yard.
I mean, Jon really fighting to stay in this game, giving the quality of Floch's draw, but, I mean, at a certain point, you're just too far behind.
And I think that point is right now, Zach Hill, because Ivan Floch is going to go to attacks, turn everything sideways, and we are going to go to game 2. Jon Finkel says no block. So that's going to do it. Ivan Floch picks up the first game in impressive fashion. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't see that every day. Really, really nice for Floch there. And Jon Finkel's going to have to try to regroup. We will see you guys after a quick message.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Ultra Pro accessories from Journey into Nyx. You can see the full array of card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios of your favorite Magic artwork at ultrapro.com.
Judge! Hi, how can I help you? How do you guys do that? Practice.
You've watched the Pro Tour. How about playing on the Pro Tour? Qualifiers for Pro Tour Magic 2015 are going on now around the world, with winners earning both an invitation and airfare to Portland this August. Visit wizards.com/PTQ for more information.
And welcome back to the feature match area here at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Zach Hill. And we've got that curve out, Zach, was just, can I say it?
I think you can.
It was devastating.
It was a devastating curve out from Floch's side. I am not exaggerating. That is one of the most brutal openings I have ever seen on the Pro Tour. I mean, it wasn't as though Finkle was sitting there doing nothing. You know, he's playing creatures that ordinarily pretty good on defense. You know, 2 3s. He had a Crow and Skyguard on the second turn, one of the premier cards in the format. But Floch just laying it on with, Naiads getting through some damage into the archetype of imagination, which is just literally over the top. An absolutely incredible start for Floch.
Yeah, it was really nasty. And it's funny because, you know, for those of us that play a lot of limited, we pay attention to our mana curve, right? We pay attention specifically with the creatures about that we can have things to do at every stage of the game. Waited a little bit towards the early stages of the game because, well, those always happen. Later stages of the game sometimes don't. But I think the dream is that, right? Like when you look at it, you're like, well, I could go 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, 6-drop, and then I would win the game. It just so rarely actually comes together like that. You know, usually you don't draw the correct mix of properly casted spells and lands, but sometimes it does, and that's why you pay attention to your curve so that you can get draws like that, or at least as close to them as you can.
And not just getting the right amount of mana. I mean, he needed specifically double blue that game, as well as some early green drops. So, I mean, you're sitting there Floch's side. You're like, okay, that's probably the best possible. We're not going to do exactly that again. Let's see what I can do this match with something probably a little bit more closer to average.
Yeah. That was definitely far from average. That does feel really good, though. And
yeah, we see Floch's hand a little bit worse than last time due to the fact that he is mulliganing right now. I don't think he's just kind of being nice to Jon, giving him a chance, saying, oh, this hand is too good. I'm going to go down to 6. Don't really see that happen.
Looks like Jon's kept his, though. Take a look at the bigger picture in our feature match area down there. You see Jeremy Dezani, #1 ranked player on our top 25 pro rankings currently, and also he topped that interesting list that Rich and BDM were taking a look at the news desk about premier play win percentages over their career. Some of the sample sizes Warren is big. Jeremy had a reasonable one, and he was at 70%.
Yeah, 70% is nearly unheard of. I mean, that is crazy. And that, you know, it's interesting because, you know, GPs and Pro Tours are included together in that stat. You have some players that play a lot of Pro Tours, not a lot of GPs. Another interesting thing that brought up is that, like, draws don't actually count toward your win percentage. I saw some of the players with, like, 50 draws. So, you know, it's kind of a lot of statistics into one. But either way, you look at it, it's really high. I'm getting told that is Pierre Deon, not Jeremy Desani this time. But they play on the same team.
Oh, I misread his sleeve.
Those madness sleeves blend into each other.
Yeah, he's playing against Godenis Vidiguris. All right, we're back in action here on our main match. I'm sure Jeremy Desani appreciates us talking a lot about him even when he's not in the feature match.
That's what being #1 in the world gets you. You get some vicarious name drops.
It's true. All right, Temple to kick things off for Ivan Floch. He's just running it for value here. I know you're a big fan of doing that, Zach. I am as well.
I'm a man who likes to scry. We see a far more powerful hand from Jon this time. Got a Crowan Skyguard, Harvest Guard Alcides in the curve, can also opt into Golden Hind to get an extra mana, but that Warrior's Lesson very, very likely to draw 2 cards this game.
Interesting. That is living the dream with that card, especially when it's going to potentially put a +1/+1 counter on his Crowan Skyguard in the process. Attack you, take 1.
We see updates from the rest of the match. Brian Braun doing it 2, defeating Junya Ianaga, former world champion 2-0. Andrea, the current reigning king of the hill, Andrea Maguchi not defeating Trey Van Cleave, but up a game 1-0 over Trey.
All right, so Harvest Guard Alcides for Jon Finkel is helping his curve out, but Wave Crash Triton for Ivan Floch is his first non-land permanent addition to this game, and it's a good one. Wave Crash Triton can do a lot of work, especially against cards like, well, a lot of the heroic cards, a lot of the bestow that happens. It can really do some nice things.
Yeah, I actually think Wave Crash Triton, one of the premier commons in the format for blue, just every single time you do anything with it, it creates a huge tempo push. And a 1/4 in this format, extremely powerful. There's a lot of 2/1s for 2 that people play, a lot of 2/3s for 3 between you know, various and sundry Minotaurs, things like Harvest Guard Alcides. You've got the 2/3 Enchantment Fall in green as well. So, you know, I think, you know.
Did you say Enchantment Fall?
Enchantment Fall. That was the playtest name. Sorry, Constellation.
I like that.
Enchantment Fall. That was the unintentional R&D speak. And then, of course, goes well with cards like Floch has in his hand right now, Nature's Panoply and Retraction Helix. So able to really blunt a decent amount of Finkel's assault if he's able to untap. That said, Finkle has had a pretty good curve so far.
All right, you mentioned it. Here it is. Warrior's Lesson, as there was no blocks from Ivan Floch, and that is going to be 2 cards drawn and also a +1/+1 counter. So 4 damage against Ivan, and let's see how Jon wants to keep developing his board here. This is a much better start than game 1 for Jon Finkel.
Yep.
He has got Golden Hind now added to the board as well.
You know, that's one of the reasons, Marshall, I really like Warrior's Lesson, is that, you know, we know that Floch could have blocked that 2/3 with no problem, but with green and a white open, I mean, just anything that Jon had could have killed Floch's Wave Crash Triton. And with cards like Nature's Panoply and Retraction Helix in your hand, you really want to be able to untap with that 1/4.
Is that a Mortal Obstinacy I see as well? I believe that's what Jon played post-combat on his flyer.
Probably what he drew off the Warrior's Lesson.
Exactly.
So making that Skyguard into a very legitimate threat, and really, at this point, threatening any enchantment creatures that Floch might play. We saw the Whitewater Naiads last game, a really excellent target for that obstinacy.
Yeah, we also saw the archetype of imagination, although
right.
that's going to be tough to get
right.
his Crowan Skyguard in to kill that, but not too bad. All right, so let's see how things go. I think that Jon's got a Leonin Iconoclast in his hand now as well, so very much green-white heroic here for Jon Finkel. but he's got a nice little attack here. That's 4 damage in the air, or is it? It is. I think we're going to see Retraction Helix here.
Trigger.
Yes, Retraction Helix targets the Wave Crash Triton. And Zach, this is a nice little added value bonus. He gets the trigger and he gets the Helix.
Right, so I think Floch's sitting there trying to decide what he wants to lock down. Locking down Goldenhind, big right now. Jon has Evangel of Heliod in his hand, didn't cast it pre-combat, so now not able to use that Hind to cast the Evangel. That sets Jon back quite a bit right now.
And even further, because now he has 1 white permanent back in his hand and the other one goes in the graveyard, so that costs him 2 tokens as well.
Yeah, a pretty big play from Floch. Retraction Helix generating a lot of value. Actually not card disadvantage either, because we see it take care of that Moral Obstinacy. I've got to update again. Godanis Vidigiris leads 1-0 over Pierre Dejon, not Jeremy Desani.
Correct.
Other Pro Tour Theros top 8 competitor, Pierre Dejon. Man, see, Archetype from Floch did a lot of work last game, and without that Moral Obstinacy, might be able to survive for just a little bit. We see Leonin Iconoclast in Finkle's hand, capable of killing the Archetype, but not without a way to target it.
Yeah, that Golden Hind getting tapped down is pretty brutal. Not only did it take him off of the 6-mana spell, it also took him off of being able to cast the Leonin Iconoclast if that's what he wanted instead. Maybe it wasn't, you know, he replayed his Akron Skyguard.
Yeah, and it's tricky there because, again, Finkle could have cast it pre-combat, but then you're just representing stone nothing if your opponent does anything. Green-white, one of the upsides of the deck is its ability to have a combat trick at all times.
There's 20 of them floating around this format. You can just have one all the time.
And if you're Floch, what you want right now is a 6th mana. Sitting on Rise of Eagles, Archetype of Imagination. Nature's Panoply still pretty good right now with Wave Crash Triton and another creature. I think you're trying to decide exactly how badly you want to attack and what that attack's going to accomplish.
Yeah, right now Jon Finkel's sitting at 20 life, so Ivan has a way to go before he starts chipping that down. He's sitting at 15 himself, under a little bit of pressure right now, but in a pretty stable board state here. He can kind of go either way.
Yeah, if you're leaving it back allows you to block the Harvest Guard Naiads. Normally you don't mind trading 3 damage for 2 damage, especially since you have a 1/4 back to block, although he indicated that he didn't want to block with it earlier, so I'm suspecting he's less likely to put it in the way, but...
Yeah, he doesn't want to lose his Harvest Guard Alseids here, so he takes it.
Oh,
I think it's unblockable. Also, it's unblockable. Thank you, Zach.
He chooses not to block due to the fact that he cannot.
Right. Also, I think he just wants to keep the Alseids around here.
Yeah. Yeah, when your opponent's at 15, you're a white deck relying upon having a lot of combat tricks. You need as many creatures on the board. We also saw the 2 creatures get +4/+4. You really want to make sure you have 2 creatures on the battlefield.
All right, so
point in time.
Ivan's going to block the Harvest Guard. I'll say it's take 1 damage in the air, and we're going to see the Iconoclast here, sort of preemptive. And it's not good news on that one, Ivan. your Archetype of Imagination and maybe even one of your birds could go down. Those are enchantment birds. So from the they are.
I believe
they
Creature
really
Dash enchantment bird.
I don't think that they would appreciate you making light of their noble, majestic birdness.
Hashtag noble, majestic birdness. That might be too long, but I want to see at least some of that.
I do too. But right now, Jon Finkel does not have a way to target one of his creatures, including the Iconoclast. So if Floch wants to go for it, he can. Now, does he have the mana? That's the question.
He does not. He top-decked Satyr Grove Dancer right now. A good card, especially when you have a 3/2 unblockable. That's going to allow you to race pretty effectively here, but you know, I think you'd much rather just actually have your 6 land and be able to start taking care of business.
All right, attack, unblockable. Finkel says, well, no blocks.
I mean, you got to respect a 4/3 unblockable creature. That can win games in a hurry.
Absolutely. Ivan Floch passes a turn back. And let's see what Finkel finds. He finds a forest. Pretty unexciting. He still has Evangel of Heliod in his hand. He can get 4 1/1 tokens with that. Evangel of Heliod, a card I'm hoping to see a little more of now that we're in triple. Never really quite found a home, but whenever somebody played it, I'm like, that thing's actually good.
Well, one of the things that we saw, I think, from Triple Theros and then Theros Born of the Gods was just that all the white decks tended to be the good white decks anyway, like fast, aggressive, heroic decks. And a lot of the time you just didn't want to top off your curve with a 6-mana card that didn't punch through your already big creatures. Now I think with the format slower and just a lot more, things like Harvest Guard Alceids that prolong the game, give you permanence, Evangel's stock goes up in value. That said, looking at Floch's side of the board between Archetype of Imagination, Rise of Eagles, and the Agent of Fates is a 4/3 unblockable, the ability to stall the ground actually not all that relevant right now. The question is for Floch, can he get to that 6th land before Finkle's now fully untapped, fully developed board is able to deal 14 points of damage?
Right now, Ivan Floch tapped out on mana, but he's got Nature's Panoply in his hand as well, so if things get real sketchy for him, he can use that to potentially increase his clock. Awkwardly, Jon Finkel's at 13, where Ivan Floch is attacking for 4 a turn, so he would like to get one more counter on that thing at any point. He only needs to do one. And then on top of it, though, he can use it on his Wavecrash Triton to keep whatever Jon's biggest threat is at bay for a turn cycle. So Floch has definitely some options here. But for now, Jon Finkel's attacking with everything. And Ivan's going to block the Leonin Iconoclast, and he's also going to trade off Satyr Grove Dancer for Golden Hind. And that means that he's going to take 3 damage. And there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1. So Jon Finkel, big turn for him there. He loses this Golden Hind to the much inferior 1/1 Satyr Grove Dancer, but he does refill his board with soldiers and, of course, the 1/3 Evangel of Heliod. So a big push here for Jon Finkel to try to even up this match. Passes the turn back to Floch. Let's see what he comes up with here. As far as getting in for damage goes, he really is kind of eggs basket 1. And he passes the turn back.
Yeah, not having that 6th land is huge here. He's still able to set up Nature's Panoply, being able to take out 2 attackers, tap down 1 more. It looks like he's actually not going to take advantage of the freeze ability from Wavecrash Triton in order to get Jon to commit to an attack and be able to kill 2 attackers. I think he has to assume that Jon doesn't have a trick here after last turn. Oh, wow.
Interesting. So a good draw here for Ivan Floch. This is what he drew instead of that land. It's Horizon Chimera. He's going to flash that in. That can, well, potentially eat. Well, it can eat a token if he wants to be guaranteed to kill something or to take it off the battlefield, but he can also throw it in front of the Akroan Skyguard if he hopes that Jon doesn't have any way to target.
I think you just have to assume that Jon doesn't have anything. I think you want to take out the Evangel of Heliod, the Akroan Skyguard, and just maybe one of the 2. I mean, it's hard. Obviously, you need to think about what's your life total. It looks like Jon's attacking for what, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 damage. So you're going to be able to survive the attack regardless, assuming that you block anything, and of course you are. Horizon Chimera going to give you an extra life. The reason that I like not playing around tricks is that a lot of tricks Jon's just going to cast on an unblocked creature and kill you. So I think you have to assume that he doesn't have anything and optimize your blocks accordingly that way.
And it looks like Ivan agrees with you exactly. He's going to block Harvest Guard Alceids with his 3/4. He's going to throw. Oh, we're going to see the Nature's Panoply here as well, though.
Trigger.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's going to get a trigger. Now, that doesn't matter for this particular combat step, but it is going to mean that his Wavecrash Triton not only stays alive, but also eats the Iconoclast. So a pretty big turn there for Ivan Floch. He is going to take, what, 6 damage here?
I think so. Yeah, it looks like I failed to notice the counter on the Agent of Fates, allowing him to block the Harvest Guard Alceids and keep it alive instead of blocking a token.
All right. You're forgiven. Ravenous Lucracota now for Jon Finkel. He does have enough mana to pay for the Monstrosity. It's got Monstrosity 3. It's a 2/4 Vigilance. Solid creature and another solid attacker here. And we mentioned before that Jon didn't play his Evangel pre-combat, which was correct. It just didn't work out for him.
Right.
But now things look a lot different, because if he would have played that thing pre-combat here, which I'm not saying he would have, but this is why you don't, is it could have gotten tapped down by the Wave Crash Triton. Instead, it's tapping down a 1-3, which isn't that relevant. Now Jon's threatening a nice, big, vigilant attacker here with Monstrosity next turn.
Lou Krakota has just wildly impressed me the
Me
more
too.
I've played with it. The 2/4 Vigilance body is very, very relevant. Able to nickel and dime some damage and gum up the board, especially in concert with any sort of trick.
Agreed. Now this is an interesting one. So Floch goes back up to 6. He has a Swordwise Centaur. He attacks for 7. That's over half of Jon Finkel's life total. So Jon either needs to gain some life or finish off Floch this turn. Right now, Ivan has 2 chump blockers, and that's going to have him taking 4 damage and being at 2. So Finkel needs a combat trick. He needs a removal spell. He needs some life gain, or Ivan Floch is going to take this thing down 2 games to 0.
Yeah, so Jon just needs to rip a trick right here. Attacking with a lot of attackers, Floch can block 2 of them. If Jon has any pump, though, assuming it's more than 1 damage, I think he's able to just end this game right away.
Yeah, and Floch just, he's accepted his fate. He's like, if he has it, he has it.
These two? Yes.
So Jon leaving a token back?
He did leave 1 token back.
Okay, take 3.
And so take 3, go to 3. And Jon just passes the turn back here. Gain a life, go back up to 4, but Floch, all he has to do is activate his Agent of Horizons and attack with both, and he can finish off Jon Finkel here. Jon did not monstrous. He had no real great reason to.
Well,
and he could represent Divine
Yeah,
Verdict.
exactly. I think that is precisely what Jon is doing right here, is representing Divine Verdict. That means that if the 3/2 gets in, if the Horizon Chimera gets in, it is not lethal. By leaving back a blocker, he says, I can deal with Swordwise Centaur, I can deal with Wave Crash Triton. So he's representing Divine Verdict. I think if you're Floch, you have to go for it here. I guess you do have enough blockers, though, that you can theoretically survive the next attack. So, Floch might have to take that threat of Divine Verdict really seriously, allowing Jon to potentially draw out of this situation.
This is interesting. I mean, I think you just go for it, right? Like, if I'm Ivan Floch, I'm just like, look, his only out here is to bluff that he has Divine Verdict, so that's what he's doing, and I'm just going to attack him and say, show me a Divine Verdict.
The thing is, with Archetype and Rise of Eagles in your hand, you might just be saying, okay, look, I'm just going to draw another land sometime, ending this game for sure. If I just play Agent of Horizons, sit back to block, the only thing Jon can do is draw something like
Colossal Heroics.
Colossal Heroic, which we saw. He could draw Tap-X Creatures, Scry 1. There are definite outs.
Glimpse the Sun God.
Glimpse the Sun God, exactly. So, a really challenging decision for Floch right here. This is where you really see whether how conservative a player is, how aggressive a player is, and what a player's tolerance for risk is in a situation as high stakes as this.
All right, and it worked. Jon Finkel is not dying this turn. Ivan only attacked with his 3/2 flyer in the air, and he's going to add more to his board. So he just decided, I've got him dead next turn, especially if he draws another land, because he can make both of his his Agent of Horizons unblockable. Jon is going to monstrous. Can Jon find a way to somehow will himself to victory? He was basically dead on board. He had nothing but a forest in his hand. He's drawn a spell. I can't quite see what it is. Man, if Jon Finkel can pull this win out with that bluff.
Oh, my
incredible.
goodness.
He's already bought himself another draw step, which is more than most people would have gotten. He has drawn nothing. It's a Plains.
If Jon can figure out a way to get Ivan not to attack again, that's why we know Jon is top-aided and won so many Pro Tours.
Yeah, he wins an Academy Award if he does that. That seems highly unlikely. The problem, of course, being that Ivan can attack in the air and not worry about it, and he can just dump his mana into one of his 3/2 unblockables and be fine.
Yeah, there's just so ways for Ivan to deal 3 damage.
Right.
I've got an update from the rest of the round. Godenis, Vidigiris, Pierre Deon. Deon ties the match at 1-1. They're about to they're shuffling up for their 3rd game right now. So Floch tanking. He has a lot of different ways to win this game right now.
Did he draw a land? No, he drew Oakheart Dryads for the turn. All right. So I think you just make something unblockable, attack with your 3/3, and just make him kill both, right? They're both lethal.
Yeah, I think so. I think you just, you make one of your 3/2s unblockable. You attack with that and Horizon Chimera. If your opponent has a way to get rid of both of those, then good for him.
So I think the card that Ivan's playing around at this point is Hold It Bay.
Okay, which he did see first game. That's true.
Yeah, and that's going to do it. Jon Finkel shows him the 2 lands. And we're going to get a little more feature match action here, all right?
I think so.
So we're going to head back over now to Godenis Vidigiris versus Pierre Deon. And that's the person that I mistook for Jeremy Desani earlier. A little embarrassingly, I won't lie.
The other friend, well, he does helpfully have his name on his sleeve for us. So.
Yeah, well, I saw the D, and I thought, oh, that's Desani.
Oh, Desani.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did
From
not
far
notice
away-
that. I thought that said MTG Madness.
Yeah, from far away, they look a little similar. I
sure.
will say that. All right, so it looks like we're in action here. Satyr Grove Dancer there.
This is game 3. We see Godenis Vidigiris on red-black. We see Pierre Deon on green-red. So Wild Celebrants and a
Servant of Timuret.
Servant of Timuret.
Both hitting the red zone here. And go says go. So
I see
this
what you
is
did there.
pretty straightforward. Although, no, he does not say go. He says no. So basically, he was passing priority during combat. But now he's going to play a Ragemonger and now actually ship the turn back. Get a look at Godenis.
I went to GP Philadelphia with Godenis where we had a long conversation about how much we liked Wild Celebrants. Randomly just gets you out of situations, and the rate on a 5/3 for 5, really not that bad a rate.
I don't know if you've seen the kind of work that Godenis does with Wild Celebrants, but he was in a feature match area to GP and blew up a Bow of Nylea on 2 separate occasions with it.
Oh my
It
goodness.
was nasty.
I've gotten a few Crow and Horses with it.
Ah.
Nay.
All right, Staunch-Hearted Warrior for Deon, and he passes the turn back with a couple of cards in hand, I believe. Right now, these players are in Game 3 already.
So a grip full of live spells for Godenis. Deon, Forest. Not
Oof.
what you want to have right now. Godenis in the driver's seat. Archetype of Finality means that any of Dejon's blocks are lethal. 24-6, just a commanding game for Godenis.
Yeah, this is super nasty from Dejon's side of the battlefield, especially because Godenis has 2 more great spells in his hand, and we're going to get a handshake. So that was a quick one. Unfortunately for Deon, it looks like he drew a few too many lands and couldn't mount much of a defense against the onslaught that Godenis Vidigiris gave to him. All right, we've got one more feature match left, and it is the King of the Hill table. So let's jump over to that one. Andrea Maguchi from Italy, and we are all the way underway versus Trey Van Cleave. And here they go. Sudden Storm is going to hit a pair of Acroan Mastiffs. This is a part of the dog pack that BDM was talking about at the news desk, it seems. And we see, it looks like a monstrous Nemesis of Mortals and a Sigiled Starfish as well from Maguchi. Now, on the other side of the battlefield, there's a Grim Guardian wearing a Scourge Mark, and then, of course, the 2 dogs that are tapped down. And Vanguard of Brimaz is going to join the troops here for Van Cleave. Passes the turn back. These are 2 of my favorite archetypes, by the way, blue-green and white-black. I love both of these decks. I'm really excited to see them fight each other here.
I really love the mid-range black-white kind of constellation deck. You're just able to really prolong the game, have a lot of great late-game cards, a bunch of 1/4s and Grim Guardian Scholar of Athreos. But I mean, getting a Bist every turn is not an easy way to go about it.
No, but once those Acroan Mastiffs get to untap, it really does put a big dent in the plans here for Maguchi. Yeah, he has a huge creature that he gets to keep attacking with, but once it can be just tapped down every turn, it really does mitigate that threat nicely and allow Trey Van Cleave to start grinding away on Maguchi's life total with his Grim Guardian. Maybe he's got Scholar of Athreus, like you mentioned. There's quite a few cards along those lines. He's got a ton of mana. He's ready to dump a bunch of mana in there. But in this case, he just has to pass a turn back. Oh, wow. We see End Step. Fleet Feather Cockatrice here. 3/3 flying Death Touch with Flash. And that is going to add another sweet attacker to the board here for Maguchi. It did feel a little suspicious that he's got a Sigiled Starfish and just had nothing with all that mana out and some cards in hand.
Yeah, we see Maguchi with Horizon Chimera and the Fleet Feather Cockatrice able to do a lot at instant speed. Another Sudden Storm can lock down those Mastiffs. Just a lot of damage from Maguchi. Maguchi's deck looks really good.
Yeah, this is my kind of deck here for sure. And he is attacking for 13. Trey Van Cleave is at 17. And, you know, it's not unreasonable for Trey to think, well, I'm going to get my Mastiffs back. There's no way he has another Sudden Storm. I'm going to be able to keep this board state under control going forward. Maybe I just take it here. Maybe I chump block the 10. But Andrea Maguchi he's got plans.
Well, I mean, who also has plans, though, is Trey Van Cleave. Trey has Extinguish All Hope in hand.
Oh, man.
So all he wants is for Maguchi to just deploy more creatures to the battlefield, especially if he's able to bait that Sudden Storm out on the Acroan Mastiffs. Those have been locked down for so long that he doesn't even really care that he has to kill them with Extinguish All Hope. That can allow him to get back in this game through the Sudden Storm. Although Maguchi still, with all these flash creatures, able to have a Horizon Chimera on the battlefield, even after an Extinguish All Hope.
Yeah, so close for Trey Van Cleave. He really wants to keep things around, but it looks like he's letting that dream die here, and he's going to block with Grim Guardian here. You know, it's so tempting to leave your Grim Guardian because it's the only thing on the board that survives Extinguish All Hope, but that's just not the play here.
You've been playing really slowly.
Andrea saying play faster, I think.
Yeah, they are.
Go ahead. End of turn? Yeah.
Yeah.
End of turn, and this is only half of his end of turn shenanigans potentially.
Always wants to play quick when they've got the nuts.
So no Extinguish All Hope, interestingly, from Trey. Just, I think, had to get, yeah.
And that's going to do it.
So he could have survived if he cast Extinguish, but just didn't expect the second Sudden Storm and didn't want to lose that many permanents, wanted to get more value out of Extinguish, but that Sudden Storm from Maguchi just put the game away.
Okay, so he did not pull the trigger on Extinguish All Hope. He decided that he was going to try to let his Acroan Mastiffs control the board for a while longer and make Maguchi extend at least one important threat onto the battlefield so that he could sweep the board with his Extinguish All Hope that had backfired.
Exactly. Like normally Tappers and Extinguish All Hope are really powerful combination because you make your opponent deploy more threats to the battlefield. In this case, though, it just didn't have enough time to take advantage of it.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's some of the risks that you take with a sweeper card like that, right, is when to pull the trigger, right? I mean, there's times when it's obvious, when you need to do it the first turn that you have the mana just to not die.
Exactly.
But in a spot like that, Trey Van Cleave really is looking to try to get as much as he can out of it, especially when his opponent probably had that Starfish on the battlefield for a long time and has really been sort of grooming his hand since the early stages.
Yeah, when your opponent has a Starfish, the last thing you want to do is trade 1 for 1. Because you expect your opponent's quality of their draw stuff just going to be way better than yours.
Now, the interesting part about that, too, though, is the earlier you fire off the Extinguish All Hope, the earlier their Starfish is gone and they stop grooming their hand, especially at that late stage of the game. I like a Starfish early in the game. It's nice to help smooth out your draws. But in the late part of the game, it really shines because those lands are effectively dead draws, and you just ship them.
Exactly. It's basically like +1 card every single time you activate the Starfish and Scry or Whale land.
All right, so why don't we send it back to the news desk? Rich Hagen's over there with some fun news stuff for you. When we come back, we're going to have the third round of draft here from Pro Tour Journey into Nyx.
All right, thanks very much, Marshall and Zach Hill there with round 2 coming towards the end of that. Let's bring you up to date with some scores on the doors. I tell you that Elie Pichon has defeated Brian Kibler by 2-0. Kibler now at 1-1. Robert Jerkovic loses. Why do I mention him? Well, he has one of the best block constructed records of anyone ever. So if he can get out of draft in good shape, watch for him to make a run in block constructed. But right now, lost his round 2. Winners this round, Patrick Chapin, William Jensen. Alexander Hayne moves to 2-0. He defeated Grand Prix Las Vegas champion, the winner of the biggest Magic event in history, Neil Oliver, by 2-0. And then Corey Lack, hopefully you saw him get to the final of the Magic Online Championship. Lost out to Lars Dam there, but he is now at 1-1 because he has put Kai Buddha to 0-2. So already behind the 8 ball for Kai Buddha. Why don't we take a look at our 2 feature pods then within our draft tables. Let's see what's going on there. So Josh Utter-Leighton is at 2-0. That's because he defeated Roberto Berni in round 2. Josh Haller is 2-0. Big scalp for him, having defeated Christian Calcano in round 1. He then defeated Luis Scott Vargas in round 2. Well done to Josh Haller in his first ever Premier event, remember. Never played a GP, never played a PT. Calcano, got rid of him. LSV, got rid of him. Let's see who's next as he plays for the pod. Oh, it's going to be the reigning player of the year, Josh Utter-Leighton, because he can only play within the pod. He'll play on the same record. Josh Utter-Leighton, what a trio of victories that would be for the New Zealander. Well done, Josh Haller. Let's move on. Sei Hang of Hong Kong, he defeats Christian Calcano by 2-1. Calcano now at 0-2. And Ryan Miller beats Paolo Vita Dama de Rosa. So Calcano and de Rosa, it's carnage in pod 1. They are in the 0-2 hole. Let's take you across to feature pod 4 then and see what's going on in that one. This, of course, featured the likes of Dezani and Wafatapa. Oh, and the likes of Dezani and Wafatapa are 2-0. That's because Guillaume Wafatapa defeated Alex Giladin, the Russian Federation's World Magic Cup player from 2013. Jeremy Dezani defeated Josh Taylor by 2-1. More on him in a moment. You see Wenzel Krautmann, he's up to 1-1. He defeated Willie Adel, sending the 4-time Pro Tour top 8 man from Brazil to the 0-2 start. And also 0-2 is the Hall of Famer Bob Marr. His predictions came true when he talked to BDM, said he did not like his deck. Well, there's why. He's at 0-2. So that's just some of the scores coming in here at the back end of round 2. But right at the start of the day, we watched the world #1 ranked player, Jeremy Dezani, draft for this morning. We had a good idea of what he was doing. We had some analysis, we had some thoughts. But you know who really knows what Jeremy Dezani was doing when he was drafting? Jeremy Dezani. And right now, it's time for the draft viewer at the wall, Jeremy Dezani, and the Pro Tour historian, Brian David Marshall.